in the coming year. This is our third year of doing the tax summit, and it started out as a small gathering at the Strathmore University, and we were asked to expand it so that we can get more people coming in, and year by year we are growing, and we are really pleased to see the knowledge that is coming forth from this. I'm sure during the summit you were able to see through the screens some of the ideas that we received in 2016 and the fact that we've actually been able to implement a few of them. So we do not take this for granted. We take this activity very seriously, and we look forward to sharing with you what we have done next year. So I would just like to use this opportunity to welcome our Commissioner, Strategy, Innovation and Risk Management, Dr. Omar, who is the convener of this function. Welcome, Dr. Omar.
Thank you very much, Grace. Mine will be brief. We said that in the beginning, we said that we're trying to get action points and recommendations. Some of the action points might be having resonance with the earlier ones from last year, but because it is just a continuation of what we have to do, and some are fairly new. I just want to take them in point form without taking a lot of your time. The first one is based on the work of multinationals and the increasing investment coming to this country and the region. We need to strengthen our knowledge on transfer pricing, training on transfer pricing, base erosion. So there's a need to really strengthen our knowledge and skills in that area. The second one, and this came as a result of the focus on short term with tax authorities. It is to have, and this was some of the tax authorities that were here, some of them have started to implement. The second one is the need for midterm revenue strategy. Midterm revenue strategy, so that you may think about the 6 months, the 1 year in terms of targets, but it's also equally important to have a 3-year plan that takes cognizance of the various sectors that are coming up. For instance, the informal and the micro, how do we make them come into the formal sector, as well as the nascent sectors such as the oil, gas, and minerals. So midterm revenue strategy. The other one is to continue entrenching taxation in the education system, both with respect to basic education as well as higher education and research. That has been a recurring theme as the discussions went on. The other one, and this had to do with data analytics, is the integration of the KRA systems on the one hand, a journey that we have started, but also integration with external systems so that we are able to optimize our analytics and the use of data. Remember, we said one of the themes is the way the tax administration is going worldwide is towards the use of data for making decisions, the use of information and knowledge. So integration of both internal and external systems to optimize the ability to do risk profiling, the ability to do analytics. The other one, which is very important, is to enhance our knowledge with respect to international transactions, the double tax agreement, for example. There are certain skill sets that are necessary, such as arbitration, negotiation skills. These are some of the soft areas we tend to forget. We might be very good accountants and economists, but what plays a role in international investment negotiations is knowledge in arbitration, in the ability to influence, to negotiate. So that's another area that needs strengthening. A recommendation revolve around, again, this is always common whenever we have a session, simplicity and predictability. We mentioned that we have adopted as a guiding principle the fact that our laws and tax statutes have to be predictable so that they're not changed every single year, but they're predictable so that people who are investing are able to plan. So simplicity, ease of use, ease of making returns, predictability of the laws and policies is a key outcome of the actions. What it says is that it's not that we are not doing it, but we need to strengthen that and continue doing that. Human capital, especially, we talked about the transfer pricing, but the specific imperative to improve human capital in the extractive sector, oil, gas, and minerals, with respect to data scientists, for example. If you look at the digital transformation that is going on with taxation and tax administration, and we had experts from Microsoft, we had an expert from Microsoft in Mexico, for example. For those who have done it, higher income economies and other advanced economies, one of the issues is we should have a critical mass of data scientists who are able to do the analytics. We also need to have expertise in oil, gas, and minerals. And this dovetails into the need for medium to long-term planning in our investment and revenue strategies. If we are expecting the oil to flow in the coming years, in Turkana, for example, then there is need to prepare now to entrench culture change, to be able to have people with the requisite skills in terms of how you're going to deal with royalties, how are you going to deal with taxation with respect to oil, gas, and minerals. So that's another area, enhance human capital in the extractive sector, which is a nascent industry in this country. And I'm coming to the last two. The other one is entrench the culture of innovation, continuous innovation. And that may include coming up with new ideas. There might be new apps, but also learning from other jurisdictions that have been able to successfully implement projects and programs. So a culture of innovation where we are continuously picking ideas and insights from our colleagues, other tax jurisdictions, and other countries. And then finally, what came out was the need for continuous strategic partnership between academia, industry, tax practitioners, and tax authorities. The very fact that we have the venue, Nairobi University as the venue, we had academics. I saw some of my old colleagues here, they were panelists from the University of Nairobi. That tells you that there is need for closer collaboration, because everything we talked about, the use of data as a basis for decision making, evidence-based policy making, knowledge and information as critical components of how tax should be managed, it all revolves around the coming together of research, industry practitioner experience, as well as the tax practitioners and also the tax authorities. So these are the main highlights. It is highly summarized. When you eventually get the report, we expect, God willing, by next year you should be able to get to what extent we have done this. As mentioned, some of these are finding themselves in the income tax review that's currently ongoing. But we will have a comprehensive matrix that gives the status of each one of these recommendations. And I would like to stop there. Thank you very much. I think Grace, you inviting the CG? Okay. Okay. Let me take the opportunity to invite the president of the International Tax and Investment Center. Welcome.
Thank you, Omar. Well, Mr. Commissioner General, Dr. Omar, it's a pleasure and honor for ITIC. We're very proud to be looking at our logos next to each other and to have us joining together to organize and present this year's tax summit and marry it with our Africa Tax Dialogue. I also want to compliment and congratulate Grace and Beatrice. You've got a first-class staff, Mr. Commissioner. And what I particularly liked, Dr. Omar, we've sat together for 3 days. It's easy to sit and talk, but from listening to the record of accomplishments and achievements of the transformation of the KRA by your Commissioner General 2 days ago, you guys aren't talkers, you're doers. And that to sit here for 3 days and then what are you wrapping it up with? Action points. And that's what makes these things worthwhile and makes people want to come back, because these are forums that are not talk shops, but are do shops and action shops. And I was thinking about that, not knowing what you were going to say. And a couple of my takeaways is to urge for the dialogue to continue. It is a key to continuing to grow and enhance your tax morale, or I like to use the word tax culture. And the metrics that your colleague put on that session yesterday morning, looking at, to have more of that money come in easily through voluntary compliance, and, look to see that metric continue to grow, maybe even have like a dashboard. And that's dialogue is critical to that, because think about it. At the end of the day, what taxpayers want is the same thing the state wants. You want a stable, a clear, and a predictable system. Whether you're going to your board of directors to talk about a business plan, or whether you're going to your minister or your president to talk about your budget, you want those elements. So you're on the same team. And also, is one of your colleagues, I think it's probably part of your team, Grace, picked up a comment I made and distilled it into a tweet, that paying taxes should not be painful or scary. And as my colleague on that same panel reminded, while taxes are the business of KRA, taxes are not the business of your clients. They're out there to produce goods and services, and the taxes is something they have to do. The easier you can make it, the more money they can make, the more profits they earn, and the more taxes they can pay. And my last points are really, I sit in a lot of these international meetings, and the way that BEPS has conquered the world, if you will, and we talk about it in the glasses half full with base erosion. What about growing your domestic tax base? And I'll say it's more fun to talk about intellectual challenges like taxation of the digital economy or international tax than it is to struggle with how can you convert the informal sector into the formal sector. Or as Carol was talking today about how you fight smugglers. It's not particularly sexy to shut down smuggling rings of cigarettes and alcohol, but that creates quick wins. I mean, the phenomenal growth of your excise revenues from increasing your enforcement and automating it and putting in place some technology. So I urge you that you've got to, and you do indeed have an important leadership platform with the G20 and the OECD. That's important, but don't forget about the plain old vanilla things that are essential to convert the informal sector into the legal tax-paying sector. And my last point really is, and I know that FDI is a key metric for the government. I read in the newspaper when I arrived on Tuesday how FDI has fallen in the last year, although it's increased as a whole for EAC. And let's not forget history. And this is true in advanced economies as well as developing economies. History has repeatedly proven that competitive tax burdens, simple and clear regulatory regimes, and strong protection of property rights will attract investment. And that's the path that Kenya must continue to commit itself to, as well as the other countries here. That is the path to attract foreign investment and grow and retain your domestic investment. Dr. Omar, Mr. Commissioner General, it's been a pleasure and an honor to join with you to participate and present your third annual summit, and I look forward to this as the beginning of a long and sustained, mutually beneficial cooperation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think it's now my pleasure to invite the Commissioner General for the closing remarks. Welcome, CG.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me say it's my pleasure to stand here to wind up this discussion. I have not had a chance to be with you throughout the 3 days that you've been here, but I've got feedback that it was 3 days were worth the time, the effort, and for those who have come from outside, the long journeys that you've made to Nairobi. I do hope also that for those who is your first time to come here, that you have enjoyed our city, and you may continue, you're welcome. I'm sure you will also have realized that contrary to what you may have heard, Kenya is a very safe place. We say hakuna matata, meaning that here there are no worries. We are very glad that you found the time to come. We'd like to encourage you to enjoy a few more days in Nairobi, especially this weekend. But just going back to the comments made by Daniel, really I think, and Commissioner Mohammed, it's really great for us to be able, particularly for us as KRA, to be able to have turned this year's summit, tax summit, the third in our series, into a collaboration, a global collaboration with ITIC, and of course with our colleagues from various tax administrations within Africa. One really cannot overemphasize the importance of this kind of forums, especially from the African context, because increasingly what we have found is that the best learning that you can get are from those that operate in similar environments. That is not to say that as Africa we don't have a lot that we can learn from the developed countries, the developed world. But sometimes we do find that our solutions are very unique, because we have economies where you have weak regulatory regimes. And of course, as we know, when you have weak regulatory regimes, then naturally also the issue of managing business and getting to know what people are doing, improving transparency, and especially when it comes to financial accountability, is that much harder. Because if financial accountability is weak, then tax administration also gets a lot much harder. So when we share experiences as Africa in a context whereby we know that we are talking of environments that are similar, then that knowledge is more easily transferable. We've been doing that, of course, through the Africa Tax Administration Forum, and but we need to find more and more forums through which we can continue this Pan-African dialogue because of the relevance that it creates for us. But also, more importantly, and for me particularly, I always say that the greatest thing I see and is the fact that when we innovate our own solutions, then we create confidence in ourselves that we can do it. And I know that at KRA there are many things that we've done. And I hope that some of those examples have been shared here. And we have succeeded. And when we have even talked to them at global level, we realize that what we're talking about is similar to what others have done. And yet we have not even learned from them. We've learned, we've innovated, we've developed these solutions ourselves, and we're able to talk about them with confidence that you can see them working. I think there is nothing greater than that confidence that you develop out of knowing that we can do it and that we can develop our own homegrown solutions. I would like to echo the comments made by Daniel about collaboration and to commit that we will actually broaden this collaboration. We, again, as a country and as an institution, we have developed very, very strong collaboration networks. When I stood at the opening session, I did talk about the collaboration we have with the institutions like the Global Forum for the Tax Information Exchange, which is the G20-led initiative with the assistance of the OECD. We have collaboration with institutions like CIAT, which is the Inter-American Center of Tax Administrations. We are members of ATAF. We have collaborations even with universities, even global universities like Stanford, and other institutions, the Commonwealth, of course, and the WCO. But we would like to expand that collaboration. So the coming on board of ITIC is actually quite relevant in terms of broadening that, because we believe that then from you we can be able to learn a lot much more. Collaboration in areas like research, and research into solutions that would be relevant for our own purpose. You know, you talked about SMEs. I was disappointed actually to hear that we didn't have the conversation on SMEs, because that's one of the areas that we are now talking about. Dr. Mohammed did talk about the ongoing review of our income tax law, which is the oldest tax legislation that we have had in this country. And one of the conversations we are having is how we are going to shape the ground in terms of the taxation of SMEs through this new framework. Because the conventional approach that we have used for the taxation of SMEs has not been working. Or rather, it's not worked for us. Many of them are outside the tax bracket. So how do we deal with them? So we're thinking of many innovative approaches. We are looking globally at what people do. We are looking at, for example, how you can twin taxation with licensing, how you can have a license type tax, a fixed tax for SMEs. Because we need to get everybody contributing to building this country. And so sharing experience is obviously something very useful. And we'd like to learn, for example, from yourselves. If you have any knowledge that would be relevant in terms of global experience in dealing with the challenge of the taxation of SMEs. And e-commerce, which is now a big, big problem. When I finished my remarks on Wednesday, I was accosted by one of the journalists that were there, and he asked me about the issue of e-commerce and how we are dealing with it. And there were some comments that had been made earlier regarding the challenges that countries are facing and how we are dealing with it. And you look at the issue of e-commerce and realize there is not a single nation globally that doesn't have a problem with the taxation of e-commerce. And there is no single country that can deliver a solution relating to e-commerce in isolation. We are all using WhatsApp and Google. And we know there are many, many Kenyans who are on these platforms. How can we practically get tax out of that business? And this institution is not even based here. The solutions lie in global cooperation. And that global cooperation ultimately will have to involve mechanisms where nations agree, for example, that based on what is now happening globally about the issues to do with transparency and the creation of transparent platforms, we can be able to know what business these corporations do across the globe. You can see it across the globe, and you can see how much business has come from Kenya. So maybe therefore how much revenue then should go to Kenya. But to be able to do that, then we'll have all to agree that all the money that is made by this corporation doesn't go to one country. For example, if it is registered in the United States or in Ireland, like we heard about, was it Google or is it Apple? One of them. It was Apple. Or in any tax haven. Because when you create that kind of transparency, then nations can come together and say, it's a globe, you're making money from all of us, but we can see you across. We know how much business you, because they obviously keep account of all these things. So we can then say, then that's how we are going to allocate the profits, the taxation, and everything else that comes out of that. So I think global cooperation is no longer now a choice. It's an imperative, because without that, then really we are going to perish. So it just emphasizes the importance of what you are doing. And I would like to confirm to all of you Kenya's readiness to continue this engagement. As I said at the opening session, we are very strongly into the Global Forum. We are a key player within Africa because of our belief that the solutions for the future lie in global cooperation. Let me conclude by thanking, first thanking Daniel, Richard, I haven't seen him, and your team for the great work that you've done in facilitating this collaboration. To thank all of you participants for making this a success by being with us for 3 days. To the organizing team, Mohammed, Grace, and your team for the great work that you've done. Really, you've made us proud. And to wish you all, as we leave, safe journeys as you go back to your countries. And of course, as we get to the festive season, you enjoy your Christmas and Happy New Year, and hope that our paths will cross somewhere within the new year. So I thank you very much, and wish you a good afternoon.
So ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of our 3 days, and we're looking forward to see you next year as we have our 4th annual tax summit. Thank you very much. And for those who are traveling out of the country, have a safe trip, and we look forward to seeing more tax administrations from Africa joining us next year. Thank you all.